Grouping is a factoring process that we employ when we have something that has 4 terms. That is the clue to us that we are going to use this technique. Now, whenever we factor, the first thing we always look for is there a factor in common to all of the terms? And we can see that, yes, there's an A in common to the first 2 terms, but it is not in common to all 4 terms. So there is no common factor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to practice grouping. What grouping means is I am going to group the first 2 terms together, and I'm going to group the second 2 terms together. And just limiting my scope to those pairs of terms, I'm going to see what do they have in common. From the first 2 terms, you see that they have an A in common. And when I factor the A out of the first 2 terms, AX, when I factor out A, I have X left over. Negative AY, when I factor out A, I have a minus Y left over. Now trust me on this first video. If you want to understand how I know what sign to put between here, check out the next grouping video that you'll see on this series. So I'm going to put a plus here. And in the second 2 terms, I have a B in common. And notice when I factor out a B out of this term, I have X left over. And I factor out B out of this term, I have negative Y. You always know the grouping has worked and you don't need to go back and try something new when you have the same exact thing in the parentheses. So what we're going to do now is factor out the common factor one more time. This X minus Y is the factor in common. Each term only has 1 X minus Y, so when I factor it out, I factor out 1 X minus Y. Not X minus Y squared is sometimes commonly done. Now, when I factor out the X minus Y out of the first term, I just have A left over. And when I factor out X minus Y out of the second term, I have plus B left over. Here's my fully factored expression. If you want to check, remember, you can FOIL this, first outers, inners, lasts, and you will get these same 4 terms.